Welcome to week 15. You are on rotocurve.com. It is Ricky here with Jim McCormick and his psychedelic shirt. What do we got going on there, Jim? What are we wearing? Who are we wearing today?
John McEnroe, 1981. He had a wonderful 81, ran through the big tournament. So that's John McEnroe and his 1980s Irish fro enjoying himself.
There you go. We'll never forget John McEnroe in Anger Management, probably his best movie appearance of all time. But that's a story for another day. We're going to focus on football today. And before we get there, let me talk to you about the big game we got going on. I was out at the DraftKings Fantasy Football World Championship. The winner ended up winning 2 tickets to the big game, so he was all kinds of excited. He's like, I totally forgot that was a part of it. And now you on RotoCurve can win the same thing that this guy who just got a whopping $2 million gets. So you shouldn't miss out. I mean, big game 51. You can win these free tickets plus fan experience events, 4-night trip to Houston. 2 tickets to the big game February 5th. They're upgraded seats, VIP tickets to the Antonio Brown celebrity game, enough airfare to get you there. All you can eat at this Texas tailgate. We'll see if there's a gator roast that is to be determined, and a Prime Sports Club pregame party with Joe Montana and Warren Moon. Jim, let's talk about quarterbacks this week. The guy I really wanted to like last week was Tyrod Taylor, but the weather started sucking. It really started coming down there. I like him again this week. I'll let you start, but I'm going back to the well here, even though they're still in Buffalo. It looks like at most they're going to get a little snow. So that's my guy this week. Who are your guys, especially in cash at quarterback?
Yeah, no, Tyrod. I'm back on Tyrod as well. You got to trust the process, as Sixers fans say. It's the process is right to have liked him last week, to like him in general. His price never rises too much on DraftKings. His floor is still obviously quite high, just because of the rushing production. And then, look, it's Cleveland, right? I mean, like, start your engines against Cleveland. They have a lot of touchdown on 30% of opposing drives. They've allowed the most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks in both ESPN standard leagues and in DraftKings. So it's the sweetest setup you can get. High floor, high ceiling. It's what you want. I also think there is a narrative street angle here too, just in terms of this guy's fending off people calling for his job and stuff. I mean, which is ridiculous considering his, like, what are you going to put EJ Manuel in there? But, there is a narrative here for everybody involved. I mean, this is kind of a good get right spot for Buffalo. Everybody's kind of on the ropes there. So I also think it's super encouraging to consider that Sammy Watkins played 94% of the snaps last week. That kind of went underreported because he didn't do much. But there's value there to me. Other than that, I know you're a pay down guy. There's only one pay up cash guy that I'm going to consider, and it's Aaron Rodgers. It's just he's Aaron Rodgers again. All that talk about earlier in the year about, yards per attempt and just the lack of, he's got, multiple touchdowns in 8 straight games. I think he's got the 11th most fantasy points per game among quarterbacks since the merger. So this isn't just a good season; it's actually turning into like an historic fantasy run for him. I think his QBR, which is a goofy stat, but for our purposes, it's an encapsulating stat that wraps everything in. He's got a QBR of 88.9 over the last 10 games passing short. He's completed 57 of 68 passes within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. Over the last 3 games. So basically he's playing Aaron Rodgers-esque football. The Bears, they're not an awful defense, but they're so depleted by injury. I just think it's a great setup, and this whole run the table talk for Rodgers. So long story short, I think he takes off. I just think he's the highest floor guy that you're going to get in terms of Matt Ryan is probably better this week, but you have to pay more. So I'm either paying up with Rodgers or I'm paying down at with Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, I like that call. I just submitted my consensus rankings for rotocurve.com. My favorite stack of the week is the Packers, Rodgers, Nelson, Cobb. But with that being said, I think it's a spend down week. You look at the prices on David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell, they're just getting ridiculous. So it's really going to be tough to fit them and the quarterback. You're going to have to make the decision. And I mean, David Johnson against New Orleans, Le'Veon Bell on the road. I think you got to play one of them. So if you're going to make that work, I like Tyrod Taylor. You look at this Cleveland defense, 31st in passing DVOA, 32nd in rushing. They don't have the linebackers to keep up with him. I think he has a big day on both the ground and the air. So that's the guy I like. If we're talking tournaments, though, or maybe even cash, if you're comfortable, with those guys, I think Matt Ryan is that other guy. If you're really going to spend up, but I just don't want to do it this week. I think I'm reserving him for tournaments, especially with the the run game that's probably going to run all over the 49ers. But I think he's the pivot. Who do we like in tournaments? Because there are a lot of options this week, a lot of strange ones, honestly.
Sure.
And I'll let you start it, but there's a few cases where I go either way.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's actually similar to cash to me. Like I like a couple guys at the top of the price scale and a couple guys at the bottom. There's not a whole lot of love for the middle. I like Trevor Siemian actually. Just the volumes there. New England has been better in their pass rush, but overall this year, they're not a devastating pass rush. It's more also about the fact that like we saw they build leads, right? I mean, game script wise. This week probably won't be that same situation. Look at the Vegas total. It's a small line heading into Denver. Denver suppresses quarterback play, but they just can't run the ball. Denver cannot run. They're a volume-based offense now in terms of passing. I think Siemian over the last 4 games since week 9 is 4th in passing attempts per game. He's averaged 310 yards per game over that stretch and the 5th most fantasy points over that stretch. So you don't think of Siemian in that way, but volume does magical things sometimes. Maybe not for Sam Bradford, but Siemian's really clicking with these outside receivers, and that's basically their offense. Like it's almost, I'm not going to compare him to Aaron Rodgers, but how Aaron Rodgers kind of revived his fantasy season in the middle of the season was through volume, through 44, 45 passes a game, and that's kind of what Siemian's doing. And he's relying on his outside receivers to move the chains. They can't move the ball on the ground. Booker is in the doghouse. And, when Justin Forsett is taking your carries, there's issues. So I just think they're going to pass. And there's volume enough there for tournaments that, if he can if the Pats do build a lead, if this guy can top 300 again and get multiple touchdowns, then you're talking about obviously that really helps you because how much money you save. Like you said, that the tailbacks are so expensive this week, and you want to get a share of them to win a tournament. We saw, the Millionaire Maker, or the championship you guys went to. That obviously Le'Veon Bell wasn't included. You got to be able to afford those guys. I also like Kirk Cousins in tournaments. I think facing this Carolina defense, with or without Luke Kuechly, they're just so inept right now in the secondary. They're giving up big performances. Last week was impressive how they chased around Phillip Rivers. I really think that was more of a Phillip Rivers and San Diego issue than it was a Carolina issue. I know they created a ton of pressure. I think that'll be more difficult to pull off on the road. It's also just the ceiling. I think Cousins is there's probably 4 or 5 guys who have a 30-point ceiling this week. It's not a great week for ceilings, but I think Cousins is one of them. He's got a 32, 33-point ceiling on DraftKings. I'm expecting around 21, 22 points from him. So, yeah, he's a little bit pricey, but you save money at least from Cousins, from Rodgers and Ryan, and I'm avoiding Breeze obviously on the road here. So if I want a guy who has incredible volume, I mean he's on pace for 5,000 yards. So those are kind of my tournament guys. I also don't mind Carson Palmer at home. You don't want to go back to that well in cash ever again because he just doesn't look good. But just the point total, the fact that you're home against the Saints, it still at least reads into the idea, the semblance. The argument is there for upside, so I'm going to probably have 1 or 2 Palmer situations just because of the price.
Yeah, I agree with some of those. I'm not really on Carson Palmer, but I'm on.
Yeah, Palmer's scary. Palmer's scary because he doesn't look good. He looks like he's bad at football again.
I think a great game theory play this week because everything is trending in the wrong direction is Eli Manning.
Right.
I mean, this Detroit team over the last 4 weeks has allowed the fewest fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Eli Manning has not topped 200 yards in 3 straight weeks. So everything looks bad for him. Let's be honest. But
Detroit's allowed 20 or fewer points in 7 straight games, and I looked this up. It's their longest streak since 1968. So
yeah, and their guys are playing well, but Eli Manning at home just has to snap out of it with this core of receivers. I mean, Detroit struggles against tight ends. He's occasionally targeted tie in the red zone. I mean, Beckham, if there was ever a guy that was going to beat Darius Slay, it would be him. And I just don't think Manning is this terrible. 5,600 specifically on DraftKings. I think he's worth a shot there. And you got to pair him with, one of his receivers, probably Shepard, who's in the best spot of any of these guys, honestly, if you're going to do it. But it's just a case of zigging or zagging when others are zigging, really, because I think he's reached rock bottom. I don't think he's going to fall any further. And one of these weeks, this Lions team, I don't think they're the 85 Bears. I think they're going to give it up. So that's kind of just thinking, the opposite way there, where I really like Eli this week in tournaments. Another guy like Rodgers, I don't think we need to go over that anymore. He's Aaron Rodgers. The Bears pretty much stink. Their linebackers, the coverage linebackers are bad, so Montgomery will probably be involved. I don't think we need to go there. How about Sam Bradford? I really like this spot for him, mostly because all the guys that he likes to target are in great spots. I mean, Indianapolis, as of last week, was dead last in DVOA against tight ends. Kyle Rudolph's a guy he's been consistently targeting over 10 times. We know he targets him in the red zone as well, so I really think he has a chance to score this week. And Stephon Diggs is another guy. I mean, he's one of my favorite receivers this week. I know we'll get to it. But playing out of the slot, I mean, Patrick Robinson was probably this defense's MVP, their nickel corner, who kind of showed up out of nowhere and had been dominating guys, but he suffered a groin injury and he's done for the year. So now instead, Diggs is basically going to have a chance to exploit the weak spot of this defense. And he's a guy that from weeks 8 to 10 was targeted at least 8 times. I mean, he's been targeted pretty much 7 times, like clockwork. I know he had a quiet week last week, but this is a guy who's very involved when they scheme him in. I think it's a week they do scheme him in. So with Diggs and Rudolph in great spots and probably Adrian Peterson back to at least put some, balance out the offense, I really think Bradford could have a big bounce back game when no one's thinking about it at minimum price on DraftKings. And Phillip Rivers is the other one. With them losing Melvin Gordon, I think they're going to go look to pass more. And I know this playing better. I mean, their corners have been actually playing really well. I mean, Sean Smith's got a high grade on Pro Football Focus. Emerson's kind of, since a slow start, gotten back to it. Even their slot corner's pretty good, and they got Shelvin Mack getting after the quarterback. But, Raiders-Chargers just strikes me as a game that could turn into a shootout. And if Farrell can't get it going on the ground, this could be a game where Rivers just drops back and looks to throw. He's got, a decent amount of receivers. He's definitely got a nice group in the red zone with Hunter Henry and Gates and those guys. So I think this could be a game where the volume is there for Rivers. He'll probably make some mistakes, but when all said and done, I think you get enough fantasy points to tournaments. Let's put it that way. And those are the guys that I like. Did we miss anyone at the quarter? You know what? The last one, Colin Kaepernick against Atlanta. Now, the reason I don't like him in cash is because I think there's a chance, they could sit him if they continue struggling, and there is a chance that Atlanta could run away with this. But they do play in shootouts. Their defense actually is bad. They dominated a terrible quarterback last week. And I think Kaepernick, obviously can beat him.
Well, the legs are still there is the point, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you don't even need to sell look, he's got the worst completion percentage in the second half this year, but that doesn't matter. It's about he could run for 95 yards and right? I mean, he could take one 60-yard run in the second half and make your day. So
Exactly. And I think if I remember right, let me get Falcons have allowed right up there in terms of fantasy points to quarterbacks. They've allowed 155 yards of the ground.
Yeah, they've allowed the second most points per drive in the league, meaning like they outscore you, right? I mean, they play like an old D'Antoni Suns kind of football.
Exactly, and Hyde we know is running pretty well right now, so he's going to complement Kaepernick. If they're running some of those option plays, I think Kaepernick gets loose for at least one. I think he could throw for a touchdown or two, and then we're talking about a nice game. So I like him for tournaments. That's my other guy. Just to recap: Kaepernick, Rivers, Bradford, Manning, Rodgers. Those are the guys I'm building around in tournament, and probably with some Tyrod because I'm way on him this week. And Jim likes all kinds of dudes as well. I know he likes Simeon, he likes Palmer. Who else did you like?
Yeah, I mean, Palmer to an extent, but I like Simeon a lot, and I like Kirk Cousins a ton. I think Cousins is the guy that I really like because I think, I just think the ceiling's there. It's a guy, like I said, the volume is incredible, and I think they're second in the league in yards per play. And they're almost kind of like the Steelers and the Saints in the sense that they do so much damage at home.
There you go. So that's who we like at quarterback this week. Good luck building your rosters in both cash games and tournaments. Before we go, Big Game 51. Just want to remind you, rotocurve.com/big game. You can win free tickets to this event, plus fan experience tickets. That's 4-night trip with 2 tickets that are upgraded, VIP tickets to that celebrity game, and all kinds of great stuff besides that. Stay tuned because Jim and I will be talking running backs when we come back.